the defining moment that started tensions on this campus? Well, I think the tensions were brewing for a while. But then obviously there was that poster. And I was personally off campus when the poster was first put up. But I think that that kind of exploded all of these tensions that were building and bubbling up.
Will Stick-Schulte was the president of Young Americans for Freedom last year. So during my sophomore year, he was a junior. At the time, he's now a senior. He had, this idea in mind. He wanted to do it, and I was more than supportive. And so we just kind of sat down one night and did it. We printed a 10 out and we put them all on campus. It was kind of just it was a little bit of a long process because we did kind of debate over a couple of things that, we should say and how we wanted to formulate some of the sentences on there. But for the most part, it was kind of, I don't know, I guess we sort of enjoyed making the posters.
I don't think that the point was to actually create a dialogue. I think the point was to create chaos, and I don't think that that is smart, and I don't think that that's what our school's about and what an educational environment is about.
We wanted to start political dialogue about things like free speech and to spread, conservatism on this campus. Because for the most part, even when I came here freshman year, and even as Will noted, it was very quiet. All we would hear about, was the annual debate between the college Republicans and college Democrats, but in terms of actual activism that they did was very minuscule. So we kind of wanted to be different and actually start a conversation just beyond, way beyond the college Democrats and college Republicans. We actually wanted to get the whole campus involved.
Can you manage your email account better than Hillary Clinton? That's funny. Anchor babies. And you're not afraid to say it, #NotPC. Anchor baby essentially, I think, refers to children of illegal immigrants who are, U.S. citizens like you and me who were born here and they have every right to U.S. citizenship. Yet there's this perception among some right-wingers that these children are being used to somehow keep illegal immigrants in the country.
Anchor babies is a term that refers to children of immigrant families who did not choose to come to this country, but who some people believe are given all of these privileges because they came to this country and they're taking away our tax dollars and things like that. And I think that that's just very inconsiderate, and I don't think that racial slurs should be permitted on campus.
Specifically, I think what really created that inflammatory tone was the do you enjoy hugging babies versus killing them? That brings in the whole pro-life versus pro-choice, and that's just something that we already know is such a sensitive topic. And if you call people who are pro-choice baby killers, that's just one of the worst things you can say, especially since just because you don't believe in something, that doesn't mean it's the worst thing ever. That doesn't mean everyone who is for abortion is a baby killer.
People will say that these posters personally attacked people. I don't see any names listed on here. I don't see us calling people out. It's just, this is what it is. We didn't, people will say that we called women, baby killers and things like that. I guess the first one you can interpret it that way, but it was a very general statement. We didn't say, hey, did you get an abortion? You're a baby killer. Because that's not the level that we stoop to.
I know there's a girl named Alyssa, and there are a couple others whose names I forget, though I would recognize them by face.
Out of the three of us who faced the most repercussions from it was me. I had, people who I had hung out with, not even a week or two prior to putting up those posters, who I had said to them, like, hey, I'm conservative, and we, started talking about politics, and we came to an agreement that it doesn't matter what your political beliefs are, as long as at the end of the day we get along, we have a great time together, and we can respect each other. Like, that's great, that's awesome. That doesn't change, that it doesn't make or break friendships. And it broke a lot of my friendships, both on this campus and back at home. And I actually even got kicked out of a sorority here because of these posters. So yeah.
I I guess a part of it is I can't understand why she would do these things as someone who identifies as in different oppressed groups. Because I feel like if you're a member of oppressed groups, then you would find issue with a lot of the things that YAF stands for. So I guess I just don't understand that.
I was scared of, if there was a nice person who would sit next to me in class and have conversations with me, I was scared to, ask them to hang out, or even people who would talk to me, walking through campus. I'd hesitate to introduce myself because I'm like, my name is officially affiliated with Young Americans for Freedom. So God knows that the minute they find out who I am, suddenly they're gonna, say like, oh, gotta go, can't actually talk to you anymore. And it's sad to say. I sort of just went to class. I kept to myself. It got to the point where I actually almost even transferred because it was just so, everyone had beaten down on like me personally so much. Like, it's fine if you want to crap on the posters and you want to crap on conservative ideology, that's fine. But when it gets to the point where you start personally attacking people, it's like, okay, hold on a second.
We have values that most of the time I think complement each other very well, but sometimes they rub up against each other in ways that may seem contradictory. So one of our values is the free exchange of ideas. And we feel like people on this campus should be able to express their points of view freely. And if other people want to debate those, that's great. So that whole freedom of expression is important to us here, and it should be in an intellectual community. We don't want to put a lid on people's ability to express their viewpoints. On the other hand, we have a value of a diverse and inclusive learning environment. And so we want to be sure that Gettysburg is a community that is welcoming to people from a wide variety of backgrounds. Sometimes these values don't match up so well. And I think this is a good example of that. And we've had others, and we'll have more. And we won't always agree on how best we should balance those values. I don't think that we can be I don't think that Gettysburg College can be a place that protects everybody from all things offensive. I don't think we want to be that kind of community. I don't think we can be that kind of community. On the other hand, there are probably some behaviors, well, there are definitely some behaviors, some forms of speech that we will not tolerate. And so where you draw those lines is really tough to distinguish. There are some things we would all agree, some racist slurs that we would all agree, absolutely, we will not tolerate. But there are other things that are in grayer areas. And so I think it's those gray areas that cause us the most problems, because there really aren't easy answers. We're always trying to balance these competing points of view. And I actually do think that we want to prepare our students to be able to stand up to offensive speech. We want to prepare our students to be able to debate issues with people who have opposing viewpoints and do so rationally and respectfully. And so we're not going to put students in a bubble here where they're never exposed to anything that bothers them. I mean, that's not a good educational experience.
The goals of the sit-in were really just to unite everyone on campus that was an advocate for peace and just didn't want any more hate to be happening on the campus. It doesn't matter what your political affiliation was, what your gender is, doesn't matter who you are. The goal of this was to unite everyone.
Their whole theme was, we won't stand for hate. And so they were all sitting down. That was part of their way of demonstrating. And so I was standing because it was on the sidewalk and I was talking to them and they're like, oh, sit with us. And I was like, yeah, I'll sit with you for a minute, because I personally don't stand for hate.
Someone that I'm acquaintances with walked by, and he actually ended up posting about it on Facebook later on, but he had went by and they were chanting, if you hate Trump and clap your hands, and and whatnot. And he posted about it because he was like, I'm so confused. Like, you guys said you weren't protesting against Trump, and you're protesting, that you're protesting against hate speech. Like, what's the deal?
Unfortunately, some people at the sit-in were screaming things like, oh, I think it was something like, it was, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. And then it was something along the lines of like, if you hate Donald Trump, clap your hands. And so it created a very polarizing environment. And that's why I really wanted to speak up and say, guys, let's not make this political, because then that excludes a lot of people.
This sit-in thing was definitely a response to the election. They said it wasn't, but let's be real. That was clearly a response to the election.
It was confusing for people who were participating and for people who weren't participating what exactly it was trying to accomplish. And I think that that's not necessarily the fault of the organizers, because it was very last minute. But I think that if we continue down the road and do things like that, we should try to offer up solutions or specific problems that we find to be problems.
So I talked with them for a while, and then I went off to the faculty meeting. And then a few minutes into the faculty meeting, they came in the back, and I invited them to come down in front and sit down. And we finished whatever little business we were in the middle of, and then we basically threw the agenda of the faculty meeting out. Because I convene the faculty meetings and lead them, and I said, I really think we need to listen to what's on these students' minds. And so that's when they spent at least 30 minutes, maybe longer, just sharing some of the experiences that they'd been having.
I remember walking into the faculty meeting, everyone was really nervous because we felt like we're like infiltrating on like the professor's space. And like, I just felt like the jitters going in, like, oh my God, I'm gonna be talking to all my professors. They're going to like hear like things about me that I probably wouldn't tell most close friends, because I had planned to stand up and speak and address everyone and tell them exactly like who I am and what I believe and what I had seen had been happening on campus. And so I just remember walking down the stairs and looking around and like saying, oh my God, there's my professor, there's my other professor. And they looked at me and like waved, and I waved back. And it was a very fluttery feeling.
I heard that faculty members cried after hearing like these testimonies from students. I don't know what these testimonies were, but the only reaction that I got was, God forbid I went in there as someone who was conservative and said that I had faced this backlash, I felt unsafe on these number of occasions. I don't think anyone would have cried. They would have probably told me to suck it up and get out. And that's how I genuinely feel.
I just talked about being a female who identifies as pansexual on campus, and how I had never really felt accepted in any sort of LGBT environment, because like both pansexuals and bisexuals are sometimes considered either not a thing or just switching back and forth. And I talked about my experience with sexual assault and identified how that was a ginormous problem on campus. We'd been receiving email after email about the sexual assault that's been happening on campus. I think I read some statistics. I think that there were at least 7 reported last year. It was way more than it should have been. It just, every time I got that email, it shocked me.
Having students speak to us so directly is really important in motivating change. I'm not sure that the students sit-in gave us particular strategies, but they certainly, I think, motivated us to think about how we might proceed a little differently.
Hopefully some of those stories resonated with the faculty, but we have to continue to tell those stories. We can't just tell it to them once and then think that they're gonna figure it all out. And I'm not saying that's what people are doing, but it needs to be an ongoing conversation, because it's not gonna get into people's heads.
People are yelling at each other like, this is what you did, this is what you said. It's like, you just want to get your point across no matter what it takes. And I think what really should happen is to get your point across in the most effective way possible, which usually isn't through argument or tension or anger or passion.
People aren't willing, aren't really willing to do that anymore. And maybe sometimes they are, but then it will get to the point where it starts getting vicious and people will start screaming at each other and, you know, using personal attacks and things like that, which is unfortunate.
Maybe this sounds a little depressing, but we are going to continue to wrestle with these issues. I mean, I feel, if there's anything I feel confident about, I feel confident that the divisiveness that we feel in this country is going to continue for a while. And so we're going to continue to feel that on this campus as well. We just have to understand that we're not all going to agree on everything. These values that, as I said earlier, keep rubbing up against each other, this desire to create an inclusive learning environment, and also the desire to provide an environment where people feel free to express themselves. We're going to keep wrestling with that.
My life motto is just to love yourself and other people.
I consider my big value in life is to be a conscientious person. If that were kind of a motto, I think that would be mine.
I think my life motto would just be kind, because I have been such a happy person throughout my entire life, and I found that just truly being nice to people is just one of the best things you can do. It can really brighten someone's day, and why not keep that positivity in your life?
Be positive. Yeah, that one took me a while to learn that one after everything I went through sophomore year here on campus, but I sort of just came out with that message. Always be positive, always find the silver lining in every situation, because there is one, guaranteed.
To thine own self be true. That's a Shakespeare line. It's something my mother always said, and it's always been ingrained to me that you need to be true to who you are and not to who somebody else thinks you should be.